G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with a malt liquor video. I'm sort of more than halfway through the third Coopers of the day, and I'd like to address Gary at Inmendham, who's also at Draft Science. Apparentarily, so it appears. Gary, bit over a week ago, I saw on my subscriptions activity that one of my co-subscribers, Due in the Morning, had put up a video announcing that you were claiming to have come up with a revolutionary, all new, unified theory of everything. And you in the morning said that everything is not matter, not energy, but made up of photons traveling in spirals. Okay, that was her version of what you said. It was a paraphrasing of it, it was a synopsis of what you said. I admit that I did not immediately go looking for your original video announcing that you'd come up with an all-new grand unified theory of everything. I did not do that. I relied on Due in the Morning as a reliable source of information about the fact that you'd come up with such a theory, so you said. I must admit that it is perhaps faintly possible to make the claim that nowhere in your first video, Revolution in Physics, Volume 1, nowhere in there did you actually personally state in so many words that you expected the Nobel Prize to be posted to you. Congratulations, I'm glad you didn't say that, Gary. Last time I ventured to trust the Vox Populai's sense of humour when I stated that I was claiming the Nobel Prize for a poem. I said so in the full and certain knowledge that they do not award Nobel Prizes for poetry. Therefore, I expected everybody would understand that I had my tongue firmly in my cheek and I was speaking in jest. So it was kind of a bit of a disappointment to me when I finally eventually discovered your volume 3 in the Revolution in Physics. What was it? Jerk plus Petty times C squared equals Gary or something. When I discovered that you were claiming that what you say you have achieved is of such breathtaking magnitude that you deserve a Nobel Prize. So if you didn't disqualify yourself with your first video, Gary, you've certainly disqualified yourself with the third. Even if what you say is technically correct, I say unto you solemnly, Gary of Inmendham, I say to you that there is in fact a clause in Alfred Nobel's Guilty Conscience Prize will, because don't forget that Alfred Nobel invented dynamite. Stretching my memory, I'm not entirely certain whether he invented nitroglycerin before he invented dynamite, but I'm certain, absolutely certain, that before Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, people were trying to use nitroglycerin to grease the axles of their wagons or to polish their boots, and they were blowing their feet off and losing the wheels off their wagons. Alfred Nobel decided that you could not rely on a paper label stuck to a glass jar. So he got his nitroglycerin and he soaked it into diatomaceous earth or fuller's earth, and thereby protected the nitroglycerin against the shock of normal handling and transit when wrapping the oily dirt up in waxed paper cylinders. Um, and it meant that if you stuck a detonator into the end of the cylinder of diatomaceous earth soaked in nitroglycerin, it would in fact explode just like ordinary nitroglycerin. And when he invented dynamite, Alfred Nobel thought that he was going to make the mining industry safer. It never occurred to him that he was handing the military a safer way to handle explosives. But anyway, to guard himself and his trust foundation against the activities of ambitious wannabes, he put a clause in his will. Nobody's permitted to nominate themselves for a Nobel Prize. With your third movie, Gary, you've nominated yourself. Totally, certainly, without shadow of a doubt. Okay, so we'll go on to some of the slightly more momentous matters that you discuss in your rebuttal video. You take issue with me not only because I relied on Dew in the Morning for the basic information that you say you've come up with a grand unified theory of everything, and if you've done that, then you deserve the Nobel Prize. But Dew in the Morning doesn't think you've actually done anything worthy of merit. And I commented in my video that Fred, or the conference report, commented that what you've done is you have autodidactically arrived at a pre-scientific theory, something that approximates what the ancient Greeks were working on 3,500 years ago. And you took issue with me for making that statement in my video, Gary. You said you couldn't find any video where conference report had made any such statement. Gary, you must pay attention to the detail of what I say. Conference report commented. His comment will be found in the thread under Dew in the Morning's breaking news press release alert to the fact that you've come up with this alleged new theory of everything. Several other people have commented on the etiology, the original origin of the theory, the first people who thought up what you've naively cobbled together and thought that it was a new idea. If you're going to refuse to read comments because you find that some people say things that you just decide are insulting to you, then you are cutting yourself off from a valid feedback source. I wonder at the sanity of anybody who tries to limit their own knowledge of what the surrounding society thinks of them. I have to say that although it'll annoy some of my friends, I think it's pretty funny that Google Plus has modified the system such that when any YouTube channel blocks another YouTube channel, all they succeed in doing is blocking the other channel's comments from their own view. The quote blocked unquote channel's comments continue to show on the thread to every other user on the planet except the person who tried to block that person from commenting on their thread. And I know this has deeply offended some people to the point where some of them have considered shutting down comments on their threads totally, like completely closing the thread in order to make sure they don't ever have to see the comment of somebody who they regard as their personal particular nemesis or bête noire or stalker troll. And all I can respond with is my perception that surely it's better to put up with a stalker saying a lot of bullshit that nobody else agrees with and accept that they have the right to talk shit than it is to try and censor the stalker by shutting down all debate. But that's just a personal view. So yeah, that's what you get, Gary, for not reading the comments, is you're not actually aware, you are not cognizant of what the cognoscenti are saying about your announcement. And your announcement that you have, what did you say? Poked it right up Feynman's tiny little hole. You've wiped out 50 or 100 years worth of quantum physicists and all of their doings because you think that everything in the universe is made up of photons traveling in circles And when I attempted to deduce from what Dew in the Morning had said that you were saying, and bearing in mind that Dew in the Morning speaks English as a second language, it's possible that I fixated too much on the word spiral, and in your rebuttal, you heavily leaned on your assumption that I don't know much about helixes, helical spirals. But, well, look at it this way, Gary. The first time I carved a helically spirally pitched propeller, I was 13. I'm 53. I've flown behind two different propellers that I have personally designed and pre-cut and then laminated and glued and then carved and balanced and varnished and balanced again. I've made electricity with a wind turbine rotor with a helically spiral pitch. And again, I've designed it and laminated it after cutting it and then carved it and balanced it. I think I understand helical pitch, Gary. I understand the concept of a helix. Speaking as an outside observer, I find it absolutely bemusing to the point of being humorous that Gary in Mendham, in his capacity as daft science, and I have to say daft instead of draft, but daft science, has come up with an hypothesis which suggests that quantum physics actually reflects biochemistry, which is in itself a function of life. And Gary in Mendham is the same bloke who invented ephilism, life backwardsism, the idea that in order to prevent suffering in the universe, life must be unwound and worked backwards. And now you're saying that quantum physics is made up of helical spirals just like DNA, and that all movement is due to gross photon pressure in any particular direction across the dimensions. Yeah, it's funny, Gary. I think it's bordering on hilarious, actually. There's somewhere in there you were trying to explain your total photon pressure ideas to me. You know, the idea that when my hand moves from left to right, it's moving because of the total photonic pressure of all the atoms and all their not matter, not energy nuclei, which are all photons, just moving a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. And you tried to explain it in terms of aerodynamics. And in your description of aerodynamics, Gary, you described how when air molecules encounter the leading edge of an aerofoil, they divide, and some go above the curve and some go flat under the curve. If we're talking about a flying machine, a levitation device, so the flat side is on the bottom, the curved side is on the top. You described exactly what the textbooks used to say 50 years ago, which is that the distance from the leading edge to the trailing edge is shorter along the bottom of the aerofoil than it is along the top of the aerofoil, and therefore, in order to get to the trailing edge at the same time, those air molecules going across the top of the curve have to spread out, and thus their pressure lowers, and therefore the wing is lifted by the low pressure zone above it, or in a slightly more nuanced version, it is pushed by the pressure gradient from the relative high pressure zone under it towards the relative low pressure zone above it, and it is lifted by the suction. Now, like I said, that's what all the textbooks used to say 50 years ago. As I was a kid in primary school, I read it all and I believed it all. By the time I was halfway through high school, there were dissenting views who said, no, that's all bullshit. What actually happens is the curvature of the center line of the aerofoil, the chord line, is variously successful at inducing a deflection in the direction of the flow of the air passing the wing, the aerofoil. And according to the argument which has been won by the mass flow velocity action reaction side of the argument, all of the perceived, quote, lift, which is generated by a wing or an aerofoil, is actually due to the mass velocity displacement action reaction of the air which has been knocked out of its stasis by the wing. So if you want your helicopter, which weighs an ounce or a pound or 1,000 pounds or 1,000 kilograms or 10,000 kilograms, if you want it to hover, then its main rotor must displace an equal mass of air going downwards in order to generate the lift. It's not sucking itself up, it's blowing itself off. Lift is action reaction. Lift is downwash. And the more efficiently you can generate the downwash without generating drag, then the more efficient the wing is. So, yeah, Gary, your intuitive autodidactic grasp of aerodynamics is at least 50 years out of date. I read New Scientist magazine, but I don't pretend to understumble quantum physics. The idea of entangled particles has always seemed to me like, yeah, Einstein said it's spooky action at a distance. It's bullshit. There's something else going on. I recently read the story of how, by using a diffraction grating and a splitting lens, they were able to get a single photon that was spinning, and they could separate the spin from the photon and then put them back together on the other side of a measuring device. So the photon and its spin can in fact be separated, according to the quantum physicists. It amazes me, Gary, that people are actually paid to talk such shit to each other and spend, 8 or 15 hours a day worrying about it and questioning their computer hooters and waiting for the answers and yet again worrying about it and talking to each other about it. It's just crap. It's complete crap, in my opinion. It's no more crappy than your ideas, Gary, but your ideas are crappy. The idea that everything's made up of photons going in circles, yep, it's about 3,500 years old. And if you persist in trying to be an autodidactic oracle living in a swamp in New Jersey, a swamp forest, surrounded by mansions of the mega rich, supported by God knows what. I mean, who pays your bills, Gary? Is it the CIA? Do they maintain you in the lap of luxurious poverty so that you can attract potentially dangerous half-wits to your channel so that they can be vetted, see who's safe to leave out there? Or have you got relatives who pay you to stay where you are so that you don't raise your head in polite society and embarrass them in whatever it is that they do that makes the money that can afford to pay you to sit there in your swampy little forest and your falling down house where your feet go through the boards of the floors when you have to go in through the back door because you've lost the keys to the front door and locked yourself out? Oh, Gary. And by the way, the reason I'm calling you Gary, it's in honour of, it's in memorial of a fella called Gareth Evans. Gareth Evans was Australia's Minister for Foreign Affairs in the Hawke government, and I think in the Keating government as well. And when Gareth Evans was Minister for Foreign Affairs, there was a fella called Boutros Ghali, was the Secretary General of the United Nations. And A rumour began to circulate throughout Canberra that Gareth Evans was hoping for Boutros Ghali's job when Boutros Ghali retired. And the cognoscenti in Canberra began to call Gareth Evans Gareth. So, yeah, Gary. You think you'd like to lead the world, but you've lost the plot, mate. You've forgotten the meaning of the word wannabe. You've forgotten the meaning of the word wibnif. Think about it. Wouldn't it be nice if everything which you have said, stated, proclaimed, bellowed in your Revolution in Physics, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, working their way along, it's all predicated on, quote, if Gary is right, then, ... end quote, and the rest of it just keeps going. Yeah. If we had some ham, then we could have ham and eggs, if only we had some eggs. That's the level of your hypothecation, Gary. It is infantile and it is pathetic, and by the look of you, you've run out of speed, or somebody's put you on Valium, or they've raised the dose of your Largactil. You look Gary the Haggard at daft science. And you're talking total shit. It's just because you like to think that you're incredibly clever, therefore you have to do something clever, thus and because you're rehashing shit that other people thought about 3,000 years ago. It's really sad, Gary. Like, once upon a time, I used to kind of admire your stoicism. But claiming a Nobel Prize for photonic spirals, moving at light speed, influencing positional reality by total photonic pressure. Gary, I think you should work this up as a stand-up comedy routine and take it on the road and perform it in bars between bands. I think not only has it got a better chance of being propagated as a meme, it's got a better chance of paying your operating expenses, and it's got a better chance of you acquiring the respect of your fellow humans, which you so obviously crave. Otherwise, you wouldn't be promoting yourself so terribly assiduously. That's what I think. Gary, at Inmendum and Daft Science. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.